Welcome, everyone, to week 2 of the Mindfulness Series. Very excited to dive into week 2 because this week is a really good one. We start talking about the brain a little bit more. And I'll dive in just a couple of minutes. We know that we've got a bunch of people traveling this week, so it is a smaller group, which is absolutely fine. And I'm recording it for you all so that you can listen at and watch at your leisure, and hoping that you do watch it before next week's session, because from this point forward, each week builds on the one prior to, and the activities help you to gain a deeper understanding of how your brain works, what's going on in your life, and how to be more skillful and effective so that you feel less stressed and feel more relaxed and don't stress as much around life and the things that life throws at us. So, with that, I will get started. So, um, hmm, sure. Okay. So, tonight I wanted to start with something really important. Like I said, we're talking about understanding your brain because once you understand how your brain works, you start to realize something incredibly empowering. So many of your reactions are not personal failures. They're not automatic automatic failures of life. What they are automatic brain responses, right? And the good news is that we can change them. So let's start with a little neuroscience before we dive in. I promise I'm going to make this simple. Your brain has obviously millions of neurons. We all know that they're constantly communicating with one another to help you navigate the world. They help you think, they help you remember, they help you move, they help you respond to everything that happens around you. So, one of the most powerful systems in the brain is our fight, flight, or freeze response. And so, this system lives largely in the midbrain. So, if this was my brain here and I kind of flip my lid, literally or figuratively, the midbrain is in here. And this is the emotional center of the brain. So, um, this part of the brain is very, very important because the amygdala is right in the center of it. And the amygdala is your brain's alarm system. And so its job is very simple: scan the environment and decide if something is dangerous. So think about how information gets to your brain. It comes in through your five senses, into your brainstem, and then up through the amygdala and the hippocampus and all the different areas that are going to observe and kind of take note of everything that's going on around you. But it mainly, you take in the environment around you via your five senses, which is what you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, and what you touch. So all of that information, like I said, comes in via the brainstem and is sent to the amygdala. But the amygdala does not work alone. Right next to the amygdala is a structure called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is where memories are stored, especially emotional and negative memories. So when information comes in, the amygdala quickly checks that information, checks the hippocampus, and asks, have we seen something like this before? Was it dangerous? If the answer is yes, or even maybe, the alarm goes off. It doesn't have to be definite. So let me ask you this. Think about a time when you've been startled. Maybe someone jumped out from behind a door, or maybe a loud noise happened suddenly, or someone slammed on their brakes in front of you. What did your body do immediately? I'd love to kind of hear. I know there's only a couple of us here, but I would love to hear what your kind of reactions are.
Definitely.
Stiffen up and yell.
Yeah, you stiffen up a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What else? So,
It's freezing, freezing and trying to catch your breath
uh-huh.
when you after you've assessed the situation.
Right. So your brain immediately, you stiffen up, your heart rate increases, right? So exactly, all of these things happen when we become triggered, right? So your heart raced, you probably jumped a little bit, right? The amygdala in those moments is doing its job. So I'll give you an example. Imagine you're walking in the woods and you step on something and it's the leaves start to wriggle and something long kind of notice out of the corner of your eye. Your brain instantly thinks, what?
Sure.
Snake, right?
Mhm.
If something long and wriggly, right? Your amygdala is is immediately saying, snake, you're in danger. And immediately, within milliseconds, it activates your HPA axis, which is the communication system between the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal glands. And these systems release stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol into the system and into your system, into your body, right? And this prepares your body for survival. Your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and that's when your heart rate, because of that sequence, that's why your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes rapid and more shallow, your muscles tense, your blood moves to the large muscle groups of the body. Meanwhile, other parts of your brain are shutting down. Any part of the brain that is non-essential to survival shuts down. Digestion, reproduction, long-term thinking, because the body is saying, we have bigger problems right now. And your body is essentially yelling, move, it's a snake, get out of the way, right? You might freeze, you might run, you might grab something to try to defend yourself. Everyone's response will be different, but the important part to remember, or the important part that your brain wants you to remember, is that you are in danger and you need to do something to defend yourself, right? So you jump back in that moment and then you look, because everyone's going to look and say, well, what the heck was that, once they feel like they're out of the danger zone. And let's say you realize it wasn't a snake. So now your heart rate is up, you're breathing heavily, your, pulse is increased, you're maybe sweating a little bit, your hands are trembling, and it was just a stick. So here's my next question. When you realize it's just a stick, do you immediately feel calm? Yes, no, maybe.
No, you got a lot of those systems
Yeah,
calm down.
yeah. You have to wait a couple of minutes to calm down. Your body is still flooded with those stress hormones. They're already circulating in your system. So it's kind of like giving a child, a bunch of sugar, or an adult drinking alcohol. Once it's in the system, it takes time to metabolize and release out of the system. So your body has to slowly come back to balance. And this is what we call homeostasis. So sometimes this takes minutes. And if the event was intense, it might take hours. It could take days. It could take longer, depending on what you experienced. And and this is all in terms of your nervous system being able to reset itself fully. So here's something that I think is pretty fascinating. Um, why did we react so strongly when it wasn't a snake? Because the brain is sloppy. The amygdala is sloppy. And I say that with love because we need the amygdala to protect us. It's designed to be extremely sensitive to threat. It is not concerned with accuracy. It is concerned with survival. So think about it. Would you want your brain to pause and carefully analyze the situation when you see something slithering or moving or wriggling next to you? No. Would you want your brain to pause before you realize that someone's brake lights meant that they've slammed on their brakes? Would you want your brain to pause when something comes flying at you? Probably not. The reality is, if it really is a snake, the delay could be costly. It could be deadly. And that is the amygdala's job. The amygdala reacts first, the logical brain catches up later. And so this is where the prefrontal cortex comes into play. So if we're not flipping our lid and we curl our fingers down, this is the prefrontal cortex right here, the PFC. And that part of the brain is responsible for things like logical thinking, decision making, like good, better, and best decisions, planning things out, emotional regulation, delaying gratification. It is essentially the wise CEO of your brain. And so here's the catch though, when the amygdala is activated, this part of the brain goes offline because the amygdala has decided that there's an emergency and we don't need logic. I mean, we might need to kind of figure a couple things out, but the amygdala has you reacting quickly. Did you ever have something happen? You say, I don't even know how I got out of the way, or I have no idea how I did that. You can thank your amygdala for that, right? So when the amygdala is triggered, blood flow goes away from the thinking brain and it goes toward the survival brain, the monkey brain, a lot of people call it. And so in that moment, you're not operating from logic. Again, you're operating from survival. And so when we're in those moments, it's not just about our body, it's also about our cognitions. Because when that part of the brain goes offline, have you ever been stressed or in the heat of the moment and you ask yourself afterwards, you're like, why did I say that? That wasn't really how I wanted to respond. That's the amygdala driving at that moment. And so, learning to regulate this response is one of the most powerful skills that you can develop in your life. Because once the danger passes, the goal is to re-engage the prefrontal cortex so that you can respond intentionally rather than reacting automatically. So now, let me give you a real life example with my son Dylan. When he was about 8 months old, we went to a surprise party for a friend, and I went into the kitchen to warm up Dylan's bottle, and I gave Dylan to my husband, and he was holding him, and so I wasn't out back with everyone. Obviously he was comfortable with my husband, but like many babies, especially at 8 months old, I was his main source of comfort. Um, and when the birthday boy, one of our friends, walked into the room, everyone shouted and screamed, Happy birthday! And then they started singing. Well, the shouting startled Dylan. His startle reflex went off. And then they started singing, and it was just this loud noise. He started crying. And I didn't hear it because I was in the kitchen and they were all out back in the backyard or wherever they were. I believe it was the backyard at the time. And oh, I remember what happened. My husband took him outside so that he wouldn't disturb the party goers. So when I found them, it was a few minutes later. Dylan was hysterical by that point because Dave didn't know how to soothe him. He was also hungry. He wanted his bottle. And so I saw him grabbed and he explained to me what happened. And so I took him and gave him his bottle and he calmed down um, but it took him a little while to calm down. He was, doing that breathing that babies do when they're upset. And his brain had already released adrenaline and cortisol into his system, and that experience got stored in his hippocampus. And I didn't know this stuff back then, and I didn't realize it until I started teaching this. But 4 months later, it was his birthday, and so his first birthday, and everyone started singing happy birthday to him, and he started crying. And every single time he heard that song, he started crying. And for 3 years, we couldn't sing happy birthday to him. And what I can tell you is that, from my understanding and what I think occurred in those moments, is that his brain in the amygdala in that moment linked that shouting of happy birthday and the happy birthday song with danger, with being afraid, with the original experience. And so when he hears that song again, his amygdala, just like your amygdala this moment and any moment of your day, it's constantly scanning your environment for anything dangerous. And it doesn't have to be accurate. It just has to be close enough. So in fact, if someone's singing that song, the amygdala is saying the last time we heard this song, something bad happened. So even though the circumstances were different, the brain still reacted as if the threat was happening. And so again, the amygdala does not care if it gets it wrong. It just wants to keep you safe. And so, an important principle of neuroscience is that once those neurons fire together in an original experience, they then wire together to create memory. And you aren't aware of all of your memories. You don't have full capability of every single event that has happened in your life to if we had perfect recall, we'd be able to do it, but most people do not have perfect recall. So when a strong emotional experience happens, those neurons that are involved in that experience connect to a neural pathway. So those neurons have now wired together, and that pathway becomes easier to navigate again in the future. And if that thing happens again and again and again, it will reinforce that neural pathway. And that's why sometimes we have really strong reactions to things and we're confused by it. And we're saying, I don't know why I responded that way, because it's way bigger than the actual situation. And oftentimes in those moments and situations, we tend to react in an over exaggerated way as well, because the amygdala just looks for something that's even closely resembling that original experience. Can anyone think of a time when you have felt like you've um, been like, oh goodness, that reaction seemed bigger than the situation? Or I think, even as you're trying to be logical about it, I think I'm overthinking this, or I think I'm being more upset, more anxious, more neurotic, more angry than I need to be in this moment. I'm sure we can all think of times when we've done that. And that again is often because the present moment has been the trigger for something that happened in the past. So even if you don't consciously remember the event, your brain is still going to activate. And so this is where mindfulness and meditation become incredibly powerful, because mindfulness and meditation activate a different part of the brain than the amygdala. Remember that prefrontal cortex I talked about. This is where mindfulness and meditation live. So when you practice mindfulness, when you become fully present in the moment, you are sending blood flow now to the prefrontal cortex. And when you send blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, guess what part of the brain receives less blood flow? Your
Yeah.
amygdala, right? So the alarm system quiets down when we take a step back and we observe. That is mindfulness. So it is a very simple concept. Mindfulness is being where your feet are. It is being aware of what's happening right now. It is not the past. It is not the future. It is right here, this moment. So I want us to just kind of explore, what does the present moment consist of? When you think about everything that's in the present moment, what would you like? How do you take in your present moment? It's everything you can, what?
You're using your five senses, I would guess, in
Yeah,
order to bring you to the present.
perfect.
You know, what
Yes.
you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm. Everything you can see, touch, taste, smell, and hear, your five senses. There's three other things that go along with the present moment. What do you think those might be? It's a little bit more tricky.
Would it be like a cognitive presence?
Yeah. What your thoughts are, being aware of what your thoughts are, being aware of what your emotions are, and being
Okay.
aware of your body
Breathing?
and
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
and any sensations you have in your body. And so mindfulness is it in if we were going to practice mindfulness, we would say, instead of saying, I'm so angry right now, mindfulness is, I'm noticing a bit of anger and tightness in my chest and in my throat. That's mindfulness, because that small shift creates space between you and your amygdala, right? So mindfulness is like right here. it comes in and say this is stimuli and this is your amygdala about to freak out, right? If the stimuli gets to the amygdala, we're off and running. But if we can insert a bit of mindfulness, then you're observing it instead of becoming it. You're instead of becoming consumed by it, you're watching it. And so meditation falls underneath the umbrella. Anybody have questions about that?
Question about that. But I do have a question about if you have, and I'm sure you can write a whole dissertation about this. But you have, for example, a service member who is in a war zone and they are constantly inundated with that, with attacks on the amygdala, that they're afraid that their alarms are sounding. How is that met? I mean, just in a general way, if you're in a constant environment, I mean, I'm fortunate that I'm not, but if you're in an abusive household or um, even a workplace, a
Yeah.
hostile work environment, how would that be managed?
So this is where the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder comes in. When your fight, flight, or freeze response is continuously being activated for fear, well, let me say this. If it's there's a lot here. So but I'll give you kind of the overview. Um, if you are in a war zone, if you're in an abusive household, there is real threat, real danger, and it is continuous. You are on heightened alert all the time, and you likely will develop some sort of post-traumatic stress symptoms. Um, if you're in a situation where you are anxious all the time, but there isn't any fear, that's a different diagnosis. That would be like generalized anxiety disorder because there isn't actually anything dangerous, but you're still anxious for no good reason. So that those types of things bring us into, unfortunately, into mental health disorders. And this is why so many servicemen and women and people come home with PTSD because of everything they've endured, and people who live in war zones, or even people who live in, really bad neighborhoods. You're always on heightened alert. So there's some sort of trauma response that's happening. And maybe it isn't enough to be a clinical diagnosis, but it is enough to know if you grew up in the hood and you had to watch your back 24/7 every time you walked from the bus stop to your house, you you were on heightened alert all the time. That might not necessarily mean you have PTSD, but you certainly have a sharpened sense of safety and awareness. Um, but but again, that having to do that will put you on high alert in situations where you don't need to be on high alert. And that can cause problems in relationships, at work, with your boss. If you move to a neighborhood, where that you don't have those concerns, right? Because that doesn't just go away. Just because you leave the neighborhood or you leave the war or you leave the abusive relationship, your heightened alert is still there and you will still react that way. And this is why therapy and classes like this are around to help people through it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay,
It does. Thank you.
great. You're welcome. So meditation, as I was saying, it is simply it's under the umbrella of mindfulness, and it is simply a formal practice of mindfulness, really. So it's when we intentionally set aside time to focus our attention. So often we focus our attention on the breath, on a sound, a mantra, music, movement. We can focus our attention on walking. Seated meditation is the most common meditation that people think about. But like I said, there's walking meditation, yoga, and Tai Chi are forms of meditative activities. All of them help the prefrontal cortex um, come alive and also the vagus nerve. I'm gonna cough. Hold on 1 minute. Sorry, let me take a sip of water. And we have Kelly joining us here. Let me see here. Did I get her in here? Hi, Kelly. Thank you for joining us. I was just having a coughing attack, so I'm just drinking some water.
It's good to see you. Just take your
You,
time.
you as
You
well.
as
Thank
well.
you. Thank you. So, so when we think about the prefrontal cortex during meditation, in the middle of the prefrontal cortex is this nerve. We have many cranial nerves. I think there's like five. There may be more, but the longest one that we have is our vagus nerve, and it sits right in the middle of our prefrontal cortex. It runs through the entire body. It basically touches every organ on the way down to your stomach. It is responsible for rest and digest. And when the vagus nerve activates, the body can actually calm down. The heart rate slows, breathing deepens, the nervous system resets. So the important point and the goal of meditation is not to stop your thoughts. People say to me all the time, I can't meditate. I don't know how to meditate. And people think that that's the goal, that I have to quiet my mind. I have to be completely void of thought. And it's not true at all. Your brain produces thoughts the way your heart produces beats. The goal is simply to notice those thoughts, maybe slow them down a bit, and not become them. And then return to your focus over and over and over again. So that's a really important thing that I want you to remember. So, has anyone here tried meditation before and thought this is good, or I'm doing it wrong, or it's bad, or I'm terrible at this? Why won't my mind stop thinking? Anyone have that
Tried a
experience?
couple of times, but it doesn't work.
Yeah,
Then I go off and think about something else, and I try to calm myself down.
yeah, yes, exactly. And that's the thing. The goal of meditation is to catch yourself quicker and quicker and quicker, noticing that you've gone off that path, because we all go off the path. We all, the goal of meditation is to focus without judgment on your breathing, on an object, on music, on a mantra, whatever it is. And then notice when you get distracted, let the distraction go and come back to your breath, to the moment, whatever it is. So that literally is meditation. And you may have to do it 10 times within a minute, but if you keep practicing it, you notice yourself sooner and sooner overthinking or thinking about something. And so that is the practice. That literally is the practice. You're not doing it wrong. So I do recommend that everyone start meditating at least 5 to 10 minutes a day. Find a quiet place. You can do it. It's nice to do it with someone else. So if you can set up a timer with someone else, you just sit comfortably, close your eyes, or just soften your gaze down and focus on your breath. When your mind wanders, and again, it will, just notice that it's wandered, come back to your breath. Now, here's the important part. You have to do it without judgment. So if you find that you're getting distracted and then you're getting agitated or anxious because you got distracted, that's when you start living in your amygdala. Meditative, mindful practice is observing your brain, observing the thoughts, observing the emotions, observing body sensations. And instead of saying, oh, I feel too anxious to meditate, just say, I'm noticing a part of me is feeling anxious. So here's the other thing I want to tell you. Emotions never kill anyone. They don't hurt you. It's what we do with the emotions, and it is how we behave as a result of them that harms us. It is how we kind of move with them. Emotions are a normal, natural part of life. We're supposed to feel them. Obviously, if they're too intense, then that's when we need to get help and support so that we don't become overwhelmed by them. But um, it's really important that you understand when you're meditating to do without judgment. Notice, oh, a part of me is feeling anxious. Okay, I can manage that. It's okay. It's just a little bit of anxiety. I'm just going to breathe into that. Oh, I'm noticing a part of me is feeling agitated. Oh, I feel a pain in my shoulder. Okay, let me just sit with that. It's okay. I'm going to be all right. Um, I, I think there's different ways to practice meditation. If you're not comfortable with meditation, then, then don't do it. Or even if you can just do it for a minute or two. But I do encourage you to practice mindfulness. And so mindfulness you can do at any second of the day. Meditation you have to kind of set time aside for. Mindfulness you can sit in the shower, stand in the shower and just pay attention to the water flowing over you and watch it go down the drain and just think about nothing else but just that. Mindfulness is being very present in the moment. And so it is. Again, it can happen anywhere. It could be when you're washing the dishes, just really paying attention to washing the dishes. There's the suds, there's the water. I smell the soap. I feel the water on my hands. I'm picking up the dish now. I'm rinsing it off, putting it over there. It seems kind of funny and nonsensical, but I promise you, you will feel differently when you do that as opposed to rushing through things or doing it and thinking about 25 other things at the same time. Because your thoughts are very powerful. Every thought you have influences the direction of your life. Thoughts create energy in the brain and in the body. Thoughts shape emotions, they shape expectations, they shape your assumptions, they shape your behavior, and ultimately, they shape what happens then, the results of all of that in your life. So, what you believe becomes your truth. It becomes the lens through which you view the world. And so I'll give you an example for myself. For most of my life, I told myself I'm not a morning person. Every morning the alarm went off, I'd lie in bed. I hate mornings. I don't want to get up. I feel too tired. You know, I don't think I slept well enough. And then how do you think I felt when I got up? Well, first of all, I stayed in bed as long as possible. Sometimes I was late for work. I was rushing to get the kids ready. Um, but when I started practicing mindfulness, I realized something really, really important. My thoughts were shaping my experience in the morning, and I did not want that to happen anymore. Right now, you have thousands of thoughts that throughout your day are shuffling through on repeat that you have probably started thinking from the time you were a young child and they're living there rent free. And we think we don't have control over them because they've been living there rent free for dozens of years. But the reality is that we do, we do have the ability to change them. These thoughts, the thoughts that I was having in the morning were shaping my experience. So I started an experiment and I started doing my mindful reset in the morning. The minute my alarm went off, I would tell myself, today's going to be amazing. I love my mornings. I'm strong. I'm going to get up. Today's going to be so much fun. And, I didn't say anything negative about the morning. So what do you think happened? I felt a surge of energy when I would do that. And I noticed those thoughts disappearing. And over time, the mornings changed. And I felt more energized and just more positive and more productive. Not because the world changed, nothing changed, not a thing, but I changed. I changed my thoughts, and that changed my reality. So I create what I want in my life. So think about different parts of your day. Think about the things that you say to yourself on repeat about yourself, about others, about life, about your health, about money, about family, whatever it is. Think about how you talk to yourself. And then think about the moments in your life where you may think and overthink more often when you're driving, when you're walking around the house or walking out in a store, when you're talking with someone, even when you're getting ready for bed. These are moments where you can quiet the brain, right? So these are moments that I want you to start thinking about. What is the quality of the thought that you have at that time? Do you have supportive thoughts? Do you have positive thoughts? Do you have critical thoughts? Do you have calm thoughts? Do you have stressful thoughts? What are those thoughts? Because at the end of the day, the only thing negative thoughts do is ruin the present moment. Now, if you're planning for something and you're stressed about it, it's one thing to plan and think, okay, what do I need to do? I've got this coming up. These are the three things I need to do beforehand. This is going to be challenging. What would make me feel most effective? How can I be the most prepared for this? These are the things I need to do. But the minute you add the lens of stress and judgment and worry and negative thoughts into it, you change the entire experience. And you distract yourself from what you actually need to do. So it creates delay, it creates avoidance, and it magnifies the situation to make it bigger than it actually is. So in your books, I believe it's on page 38. You can see here. This is the activity. Does everyone have it? If you're not, so this is the activity here, and basic this is if you're driving, obviously you might not be able to write things down, but um in this bubble, what I want you to do is think about, the negative thoughts. I'm going to give you a few minutes. Think about the negative thoughts that you have or that you say to yourself when you're stressed that might undermine your ability to be positive or and if you're can't write them down, and you want to kind of speak them out loud to me, you can do that, but you can also just keep it private. So whatever you're comfortable with. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. And try not to filter them. Just be honest with them. I'll give you another minute or so. So you may be, as you start to think about this and you start to kind of sift through the thoughts that you have and the memories of kind of growing up and young adulthood, you may start to understand and realize a pattern of regular negative thoughts or typical thoughts that don't feel as comfortable as maybe you would like them to be. Um, so on the next page, does anyone have any insights about the thoughts that are coming up for them? Anything that they would want to share or maybe that they realize about the thoughts, maybe when they started or and you could share some of the thoughts if you want to, but you don't have to. This is, again, you can keep them private.
I'll say something.
Yeah.
One of my thoughts that just cycles over and over again is I have so much to do today.
Mm.
I have so much going on. And I
Yeah.
could see how that is like a waste of my energy just to even say it because it slows me down just being a victim to it.
Right.
But no matter how much work I do on myself, it seems like I still have so much to do in every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and we're going to dive into this. But in the coming weeks, you can use that if that's something that you say regularly. You can use that as the phrase that you want to um, kind of explore deeper. And we dive into an activity that allows you to kind of um, explore more deeply where that comes from. Is it a need to always be busy? Is it, is it perfectionism? Is it um, trying to show up for other people? Like what could that be about? But we'll dive more into it. In the meantime, when you notice the thought, today is about what would be more helpful in those moments. So when I started doing this mindfulness, I never say to myself, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I refuse to say it to myself anymore. Because I choose my day. I choose my calendar. I choose my schedule. And if it's full, then I've done it. And if it's too much, then I've done it. And so I have to decide. And so what I say to myself now, if I have a full day, is my day is full and I planned it that way and I can manage it. And if I can't manage it, then I need to take something off my plate. So on the next sheet, what I'd like you to do on the next bubble, I think it's 2 pages out, write the more helpful thoughts that you could say in those moments when you're stressed. Thoughts that would help you maybe feel calmer, feel more capable, feel more grounded. And I'll give you a couple minutes to think about what your negative thoughts are. Try to match the thought, the kinder thought, to the negative thought. So if the thought is, I hate myself, then maybe the kinder thought could be, I'm a beautiful person and I'm I'm okay as I am, or I love myself, or I deserve to be happy, or whatever. If the thoughts are you're not doing enough, maybe you say to yourself, I'm I'm doing what I'm capable of doing right now, and that's enough. If it's, I'm not okay or I'm not going to be okay, then say, I can control what I control, and I'll do the best to be, to be my best every single day and to manage what I can. So I'll give you a couple minutes to think about that. And maybe Kelly, I can ask you as you're driving, can you think of something that would be more helpful for you in the moments of that kind of, I have so much to do, I have so much to do. What kind of a thought, if you can catch yourself, would be more helpful?
You know, I could say right now that I could say, I, I love myself enough to realign tomorrow with a different type of schedule. I see that it has something to do with self love, which is a thought that just popped in there when you were asking me to look. So,
And I think things pop up for a reason when we're doing this because you're accessing different part of the brain, different parts of the brain that you haven't thought about for a long time. And so that's really powerful, right? That you can give yourself that permission in those moments that I'm lovable, I'm good enough, I'm okay, and I don't have to pack so much in order to feel like I'm okay. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else? I'll give you a couple more minutes to write, and then we'll move on to um, today's a little bit shorter week. We'll move on to our meditation and uh, and our homework assignment. Okay. All right. So let me talk to you a little bit about your homework, and then we'll do our final meditation for the day. So your homework is as follows. To start practicing mindfulness day by day in the nooks and crannies of your day. When you're walking, just notice that you're walking. Pay attention to the sky. Pay attention to the ground. Pay attention to the way your feet sound hitting the ground. Pay attention to what your hands are doing. Pay attention to the colors around you, the temperature of the air without judgment. When you're, driving, when you're washing dishes, when you're eating, just eat. Just wash the dishes. Just drive. Try not to be in 200 different places. Just be where your feet are. I want you to practice as much as you can throughout your day to just be and just notice. Um, and I want you to do this next activity, which is the quality of thought exercise, which is in your book. But throughout your week, I want you to start becoming more aware of your thought patterns. You might notice things like worry or anxiety, shoulds, have tos, rules, judgments, criticisms, comparisons, impatience, anger, self-doubt, whatever it is. Just notice the patterns. Not with judgment, again, just notice them because awareness is the first step. I am asking you this week to start taking that step back from your amygdala, from the automatic pilot that the amygdala has for us to kind of just be on that hamster wheel and just keep going and going. Awareness is that first step towards change. And mindfulness and meditation create the space between the stimulus and the response, like I said before. And so try to meditate a couple of minutes a day, 5 to 10 minutes a day if you can, but practice mindfulness daily. Instead of, um, you know, doing something where you're scrolling on social media or, on your phone or iPad or whatever, sit and do something mindful because when we scroll and we go from video to video or we're getting interrupted by games, we're actually training our brain to be less able to focus and less able to pay attention and less able to be calm. And so, um, in any event, the activity, if in your book you'll see you can write down the thoughts that you have. Notice when you're having those thoughts and just try to keep your book near you or a piece of paper and then add it to the book later. But write down when, you're having those negative thoughts. But I also, what I want you to do, also write down if something beautiful happens. If you notice that you're feeling calmer, clearer, more balanced, or if you're more intentional, or, this is how you begin to change those patterns, right? That may have started years, sometimes decades ago. And this is how we begin to live with more freedom, with more presence, with more joy. And so next week, we'll dive even deeper into those patterns and how those patterns work and how we create kind of those stories that shape the entire direction of our lives. So for today, your job is simple again. Pay attention to your thoughts, pay attention to your emotions, pay attention to what you're feeling in your body, and pay attention to what you're bringing and what you notice in your surroundings. Try to just be where your feet are. And we're going to do a music meditation today. So I want to get here. I'm hoping that you can hear this. Hang on one second. We get through the ad here. Not. Okay. Can you hear this music? Can someone just let me know? I'm going to lower this because I can't see you all now. You can't hear it. No. Let me see if I can raise the volume. So you can't hear that at all. No one can hear it. Okay, that's all right. We will do a slightly different meditation, but that's okay. What I will encourage you to do is we'll do a shorter, like 10-minute meditation. But what I will encourage you to do once we get off the phone is find some relaxing music, a relaxing song, close your eyes, and just pay attention to the music. Pay attention to how you feel when you're listening to it. Pay attention to how you feel emotionally. Pay attention to the different sounds, the notes, if there's words. Just notice everything there is to notice. Music is very powerful and sound is very powerful, and it takes us on a journey. And with the right music, we can really relax our brain, relax our minds, and relax our bodies. So for me, music is my go-to when I meditate. I am a huge music meditator. So after we get done with this shorter meditation, I encourage you to just go onto YouTube, put in like relaxation meditation music, and then click on one and listen to it. Okay. Um, I'm gonna stop recording for now because that is the